Okay, lovely people. So yeah, we keep moving on into the left angle cross of obscuration. I love the cross of obscuration, and a lot of friends of mine have it. Very funny, always coming out with something completely different. And we do this well. The sun is in gate 61, the 5-1. And this becomes evident when you move to the left angle cross of obscuration. It's the 3-5, the 350 underneath that brings all of this discomfort, misunderstanding, confusion to the 61-62 polarity, which in fact is very straightforward. What are the inner truth of the facts? What are the inner truth through the details? When you bring the 3 and the 50 underneath, is that the laws are all confusing. How do I penetrate these confusing laws? How do we find the absolute law? Well, we know that they have been thinking about that forever, and the fact of the matter is that you've been done. They haven't done a hell of a good job. It's not an easy thing to think out what the underlying code is. It's my experience with design. I'm often accused of having an enormous ego, which I do indeed have. Otherwise, I couldn't do this job. As smart as I am, I never could have ever come close to figuring this out, let alone wanting to. It's one of the things that you recognize with the whole business here of the 61 is that the absolute is not something that you can attain just by thinking. You can't. What you end up is in all kinds of obscure paths because it's so obvious when you look at the history of humanity that the greatest inspirations humanity have received have been mystical. The breakthroughs have all been mystical. These flashes of voices, dreams, things happened in Einstein's dreams. There's this magic that brings these very unique themes into the world. But just thinking, it has, as the eventual 6-3 of this gate recognizes, its limitation. It's also saying something interesting. You may never know God because God may not exist, and we don't know it. There's a limit to what we call religion. No, there's a limit. So far, no further. I was not capable of doing what I have displayed over the last 18 years. I'm not capable of it. If I had not been through my process and manipulated in my process, I can imagine it being possible that I know so much. Where does it come from? This is the part of the 61 has to meet in the 60. It's like, so this isn't going to be the answer to solve the death question. No matter how much we try to figure out what the thematic of this is, it still isn't going to stop us from dying. The left angle cross of obscuration, the fifth line, the 5-1 influence, the enlightened father mother figure who recognize wisdom and powerful searching can mold a generation by its influence. The pressure to know that may result in influence and wisdom. It may result, but remember, this is the cross of obscuration. Think about what it actually says, molding a generation by its influence. It is the molding that is the point. And one of the things that you see is the obscure thought is more likely to mold a generation than the truth. And it's every way you look. It's every kind of path that paths. It's all there. It's all over. And it is these obscure and obscure only in the sense that it never allows you to really get to the truth. It takes you to a relative truth, a subjective truth, and yet it's powerful enough to mold a generation. When I did the very first reading, my very first reading, I heard something, I heard some scuttlebutt, that kind of stuff you hear other people say. This was told to me. One person had said to another person. I really don't know whether it's accurate or it's just raw power. Is it raw power to get me to believe this? You all know I am. This is why it was so important for me in the early years to teach other people so it could be my transferred, so people could see it's not just because I can overwhelm you with my aura and pull you in. This is the thing about the obscure, and that the obscure carries this kinds of power. In other words, let's say human design was nonsense. I would still have students. I know that there isn't anything you can sell, there isn't anything you can teach that people will think is valuable. If I had known all of this when I was young, I would have made my billions first. It's so easy to do. And then you think these beings are enlightened. It says enlightened. Oh yes, I followed this obscure path, and now I have my obscure truth. And shit, it don't fit in society anymore. What happened to my life? I'm over here. And of course, it takes people away. Beware of 61 fives. A tendency and power to want to reinforce compi- compliance to ensure lasting influence. The pressure in knowing to resent challenges and demand acceptance. As good as description as the Catholic Church is obscura, or the mullah is obscura, or any radical fundamentalism boo boo from any religion, and you see how obscurism so powerful. And remember, it's not the knowledge that they present is obscure. It isn't. They flesh it out. Every sect, every religion, they all have their way of presenting you with their truth. It obscures the truth. And then it says something about this death process. When you leave the Maya behind at the 4-6 and you go up here into the left angle, there's no absolute truth. Let's take one away. At least one. You've got to have truth to take to the grave. If you're 61, you got to have some truth to take to the grave. It doesn't matter whether it's in universal truth. Any truth will do. And then you have all these people that out of the deep fear that their life is coming to an end and they look for this very obscure and they bring it to others and impose it to them. As a 5, this is the Jim Jones business. Death is easy. There's no point. Wow. Then we go to the 5-2. The 5-2, and what we have seen in mutations, that the 5-2 has certain advantages. One of the advantages that it has to be an isolated father-mother figure is the way it's done. If you see somebody who's an obscure teacher, take any Swami, master, teacher, guru, you see is somebody in isolation. It's the only way it works. If you see your master 24 hours a day, you're going to question who they are, because to be awake 24 hours a day means you really have to be awake, and you're presenting a truth in the world, and you could not present it 24 hours a day. You cannot fool people. You can't. So they go into isolation. They have their little cado around them that protects them, and then they go into isolation in order to have this influence. And the 5 loves to look down, so they have the 5-2 mother, father, child looking down and pattern the heads of the children. You do what you're taught. You follow this, and you have the truth. To listen to people who are into Scientology talk about this thing, it's like, wow, this is a great 5-2 joke in all of this. Old L. Ron Hubbard. I liked it when he was writing science fiction. He was a good science fiction writer, sort of. As far as I know, he and Elvis run a gas station in southern Arizona. Bless their hearts. So the 5-2 has the capacity to be able to influence on this cross, but to be able to influence in the way in which is the best heretical perversion, that second line perversity quality, to be able to take people down a very strange track, and at the same time to be able them to sense that this is a track of truth. The Atlanteans. Have you ever met an Atlantean? Oh shit, talk about obscure. And these people, their whole thing is that this whereas the truth is. There's no other truth. And whether it's the Atlanteans or the Pleiadians, it goes on and on and on and on. The third thing is that when you come from a position of synthesis, you can see that if everything is truth, you've got nothing against Atlanteans and Pleiadians, as long as you're there within the context of the way in which everything can be understood. But the moment is just a way. The moment is just a way. Right away, you got a problem, because what you're seeing is what you're having people who are aligned to the truth in order to avoid the ultimate truth, the pointlessness of their lives. So you can already see something else about the 5 that is deeply limiting. It's a parental figure. The heretic is a parental figure. I'm so aware of that in my role that you play. It's the authority role. I'm a 5-1. You work out your authority. The very power to be a heretic is rooted in the depth of your authority. And you can see the limitation of the 5. It's always, I'm telling you, and you better get it, or you don't get it at all. It's something that, even though it's coming to an end, it's still all around wherever you look. And this is just the way I describe it, mystically or spiritually. Think about diets, just diet. How many people are being taken down obscure path that lack truth? There's a relative truth. You can take any scientific experiment and pull it towards what you want. You can show that if you only take this kind of food, that it will do X, X, X. But the moment you put it into the experiential field, there are people who do things until they die. I was reading about this woman who was a marathon running, and the doctors were telling people that do athletics not to drink too much. For years, all you hear was drink, 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 drink. Now they're telling them not to drink too much. And they have these power drinks now. So there's a woman marathon running who doesn't understand what she's overhydrated, because she drinks, drinks, drinks. She thinks she's dehydrated. Instead, she takes the power drinks and drops dead in the middle of the track. You have all these people that would tell you these kinds of things, and they have followers with kinds of therapies, all kinds of things. It's all out of this. And it's all the old way. The only way is their own authority. That's way of influence, where there is the enlightened figure that is sitting there and telling you the story. It still works. It's still what's going on until we wake up the 6. We need to wake up the 6, okay? So yeah, a lot of false prophets, a lot of strange people telling you what to do. We have no idea what's going on, especially concerning diet.